and that the rebirth, for those who are reborn, go straight to heaven if they die in that state. Well, St. Alphonsus, says he contradicts that, and he contradicts the whole position, because he admits that baptism of desire does not give you the forgiveness of the temporal punishment. So a person wouldn't go straight to heaven.
So that's an error, a theological opinion that is an error.
Right, and he's one of the strongest, quote, arguments brought forward, and he's not even explaining the position correctly. Or if that's their official position, that's complete nonsense. That's easily refuted by the Council of Trent. You would have to say there's no way to reconcile, is a person born again? Well, if he's born again, he must go straight to heaven when he dies. Well, no, this person doesn't have the temporal punishment due to sin forgiven. That's just the beginning of the contradictions. There are tons of them, such as Pope Innocent III, in the first definition on outside the church there's no salvation, he says that there's one church of the faithful, outside of which nobody at all is saved.
Right.
Well, who are the faithful? In the early church, the catechumens, the unbaptized catechumens, had to leave Mass before the creed, before the Mass of the faithful began.
Right.
So, tradition, liturgy, the ordinary universal magisterium teaches us that the catechumens are not part of the faithful. So what's the proper understanding of no salvation outside the faithful? Does it leave any room for salvation without water baptism? No. In fact, it leads you directly to the conclusion that catechumens can't be saved. Do you not see that that's problematic?
I do see that as problematic, and I do see the contradiction, I guess. I just, you look at everyone that, either A, teaches it, B, tacitly approves it, and implicitly,
Oh, here's another thing.
Teaches it.
Oh, go ahead. No, you have some time. Go, sorry.
It teaches it as well, and I know how you guys talk about Suprema Hoc Sacra, how that was wrong, and but the Canon Law Digest that went along with it, you read it in there, and it's, reaffirms it as well. So yeah, it does appear to me, from everything I've learned, to be a clear contradiction, but I guess I don't know if it can be reconciled, or maybe it's not a contradiction and I'm looking at something, different. I don't know. You look at a lot of people who are for, I guess I would say, baptism desire for a catechumen, and they quote everything, the Council of Trent, Session 6, Chapter 4, the Council of Trent, Session 7, Singular Quadam, Pope Innocent II in his letter to the Bishop of Cremona, Pope Innocent III, and Debitum Pastoralis Officii. I'm sure you've read that before. The Errors of Michael de Bay, Denzinger 1033, Quanto Cafficio Mora Mora. I know, and I've read your book, with your theological opinion on why it's one way, and then I read theirs and their theological opinion why it's, the opposite interpretation, and it leaves, a Catholic like me saying, okay, the church teaches there's no salvation outside the church, and countless things you read and see, baptism and desire to me for a catechumen seems plausible. That's why I end up in this position, I guess.
Well, all those points are easily responded to and have been responded to. And see, I like to use the analogy, it's a tower of sand, okay? Mm-hmm. Baptism of desire is a tower of sand that basically if you combine enough misunderstood arguments, fallible arguments, theological statements that are erroneous and not infallible, and you pile them up one after another, okay, for someone who's not familiar with the issue or isn't looking at it in goodwill, it can seem somewhat impressive. But when you start to look at those individually, do any of these things actually prove the position? No. It just crumbles. It's a tower of sand. And it's similar to the evolutionary arguments, that basically they pile on top of each other, one after another, a false objection, a misunderstood thing, a fabricated piece of evidence, and when they pile them up, people then begin to think that there's some merit to the evolutionary theory, but when you look at these things individually, no, not at all. Okay, Pope Innocent II, it's not even dated. They don't even know when it is. They don't know who it was written. They don't even know who the author was. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
With the Pope Innocent III letter, it's clearly not infallible. It's a letter to a bishop. Okay, the same Pope Innocent III taught that original sin was remitted by circumcision in a letter of equal authority. Okay? Well, that's expressly contrary to the teaching of the Council of Trent.
Can I ask you a question on that? I know you're going to move on to other things. Pope Innocent III, what on him teaching that? Do you believe he committed a mortal sin by teaching that? Do you believe he was just theologically wrong and in error, or he erred in good faith? What is your opinion of that? Because didn't he go to heaven because Bellarmine said in one of his books that he appeared to someone he knew and he was given a great grace to go to heaven? Not that that's really relevant. I'm just asking.
Okay, yeah. He was just wrong. Popes can be wrong. There are many, many examples of this in the history of the Church. They can be wrong without being heretics. Okay, like Pope John IV. He was the second pope to reign after Pope Honorius. Pope Honorius was, unfortunately, a heretic because he taught the monothelite heresy in two of his letters to Sergius. Pope Honorius reigned in the 7th century. He was later condemned as a heretic by the Third Council of Constantinople. But Pope John IV was the second pope to reign after Pope Honorius. Mm-hmm. And he looked at Honorius' letters and said, they're ambiguous. He was not really teaching that Christ has only one will. People have misunderstood this. He was wrong, okay?
So Pope Honorius really was a heretic.
Yeah, but John IV didn't think he was. And John IV was just wrong.
I didn't think a pope could be a heretic. A real pope could be a heretic.
No, he can become a heretic. He would lose his office automatically.
Did he lose his office then?
Yeah. If he became a heretic, he can't be the head of the Church.
I didn't know it was possible for a true pope to actually fall into heresy.
Well, we have a true pope who's been denounced. It's not possible for a true pope to teach error in his authoritative capacity to the whole Church. Okay, but the point is that popes can be wrong. Okay.
What about Session 7 in the Council of Trent?
Again, well, let me just finish this Innocent III point.
Yes,
okay,
sir. Go ahead.
Okay, Innocent III, another standard argument. Some baptisms are heretic just recently left a message quoting one after another these false arguments, which are easily refuted. Okay, Innocent III. It's a letter to the Bishop of Metz. Okay, as I said, he also wrote Ex parte Tua of the same authority, which taught that original sin, quote, was remitted by the mystery of circumcision. That is completely wrong, and the Council of Trent says it was not. So you would have to agree that Ex parte Tua of Innocent III was wrong.
Right.
That was of equal or more authority than Pope Innocent III. So it's a clear example of papal error in capacities that don't rise to the level of a magisterial statement. All right, so that proves nothing. The point is, are any of these things definitive? No. Okay, they don't prove baptism of desire. And so my question is, why do people gravitate toward the fallible, easily refuted arguments, which don't prove the point, and not gravitate toward the definitive dogmatic truths? It's because they're evil. That's how simple it is. That's how simple it is. They are attracted to the lie because they're.
In my defense, Brother Peter, I would like to say that I'm trying to believe, with good faith, everything the Church does truly teach. And I know that you need to start with what is infallibly taught. And, as you study and see things, what about, I don't know if in your book you talked about Pope St. Pius V and the errors of Michael Dubé, Denzinger 1031.
Okay, you were saying Pope St. Pius V.
Yeah, and the errors of Michael Dubé, Denzinger 1031 and Denzinger 1033.
Okay.
Michael Dubé's propositions are condemned because they assert that perfect charity can be in catechumens and penitents without the remission of sins. They're false because one cannot have perfect charity without the remission of sins, correct?
Right.
Okay.
So when you want me to respond to that, or are you done?
Yeah, I do. I'm curious what your opinion is on these two statements.
And you thought that you said St. Pius V taught baptism of desire in these statements. Okay, that's completely untrue. Okay, he's condemning the errors of Michael Dubé And when these errors are condemned, the entire thing together is condemned. It doesn't state anything pro or con one portion of the error. It's just condemning the entire error together. And his error was that catechumens could have perfect and sincere charity without the remission of sins. That's simply false. Okay? Because a person cannot have perfect charity or justification without the remission of sins. And so it's condemning the entire notion in a similar proposition in number 33, that a catechumen who lives justly and rightly fulfills the law through charity before the remission of sins has been obtained. It condemns the entire proposition. And what proves that this doesn't prove anything for baptism of desire, I mean, it should be obvious. I mean, the people who actually, and that's why, like, there was the sheet put out by the heretical CMRI that listed all these false arguments. It also includes the egregious mistranslation of Session 6, Chapter 4,